Hello, everyone. We are going to go over the nitty gritty basics of photosynthesis. Okay, here we go. So, we're going to go over in this lecture the light reactions and the Calvin cycle. So, we're going to skip through a couple of these things here. So, okay, we're getting our light energy from the sun, combining that with carbon dioxide and producing glucose, super simply. Okay, so inside your chloroplast, which is where photosynthesis takes place, you have your thylakoid membranes. And your thylakoid membranes are these little stacks of green discs. Okay, and an individual stack is called a grana, where the disc itself is called a thylakoid membrane. And those thylakoid membranes are like little mitts for photons of light or balls of light that they're going to catch to bring into the cell to help power photosynthesis. Okay, so those thylakoids are green, meaning their pigment is colored green with chlorophyll, which absorbs the sunlight. Then an electron transport chain is going to be activated that is going to create the environment for an ATP synthase pump, just like we talked about in respiration. And then we're going to use the carbon dioxide to help make our sugar. Okay, so we have two steps. We have the light reactions, okay, and the Calvin cycle. All right, so the light reactions are to help produce energy. Okay, so we're taking solar energy and we're turning it into chemical energy. So we're creating our electron carrier, NADPH, and some ATP, and we use that to power that NADPH shuttles electrons along the electron transport chain and helps to power the Calvin cycle. Okay, which is going to take in carbon dioxide and use that and reduce that carbon dioxide to produce glucose. Okay, so in the basics, we've got sunlight is coming into the thylakoid. It is also taking in water, and this is where we get our byproduct, our waste product of oxygen. Very important waste product, right? So we get our oxygen from our water, and then from our thylakoid membranes, we produce NADPH, our electron carrier, and some ATP. Okay, and this helps to power the Calvin cycle. Okay, so we have CO2 coming in, and ATP and our electron carrier, NADPH, helping to power up the Calvin cycle to produce glucose. Okay, so that you need to know the basics of this figure. Okay, that sunlight comes in, that we get our waste product of oxygen from water, and that we get our sugar from our CO2. Okay. So our light reactions. So what's happening in our thylakoid membranes is we have we can call them photosystems. Okay. And so within our thylakoid membranes, we have these photosystems that are composed of thylakoids and chlorophyll molecules, where photons of light are going to be passed along until they hit what's called the reaction center, or the primary electron acceptor. Okay, and then once that primary electron acceptor is activated, that is going to activate the electron transport chain. Okay, so we have light coming in here, our primary electron acceptor. Okay, and then that is going to help set up our electron transport chain to create our hydrogen ion gradient that is then going to power an ATP synthase. Okay, so this is our electron transport chain from respiration. It works a little differently in photosynthesis. So in photosynthesis, we still use ATP synthase, and we have what's called photophosphorylation going on. So we are still creating, we have our electrons being transported by our NADPH, and we are creating the hydrogen ion concentration that is then going to diffuse through the ATP pump and help to create ATP within the thylakoid membrane. Okay, so let's go here. All right, so again, our photon of light comes in. Okay, this is in the thylakoid membrane. We have our photon of light bouncing between these molecules of chlorophyll and then hitting the primary electron acceptor, okay? And then after we hit that primary electron acceptor or our reaction center, okay, this then excites what's called our reaction center, and this is where we start our electron transport chain. So here we have a little electron, okay, so that's a step down the electron transport chain, okay, and we're going to pop off a hydrogen ion, okay, and then as we go, so the result of this here is our hydrogen ion, which then again is going to create, after this happens over and over, it's going to create the hydrogen ion gradient. Okay, so see, it's going to happen again. So let's go back to the beginning. Our photon of light comes in, hits these molecules of chlorophyll, okay, excites the reaction center, then that starts the electron transport chain. So every time we have an electron, we're going to pop off a hydrogen. We've got an electron, we're going to pop off a hydrogen, okay? So every time we do that, that sets up that hydrogen ion gradient for us. So let's look at this whole thing, okay? In photosystem 1, we have light hitting the photons, okay, photons hitting the chlorophyll molecules and then exciting the reaction center. And we excite that reaction center, we start our electron transport chain. Okay, so electron, pop off a hydrogen, electron, pop off a hydrogen. Okay, electron, we're going to pop off a hydrogen. And then we end up with our hydrogen ion gradient that then those hydrogen ions are going to diffuse through, and we have what's called photophosphorylation occurring with the creation of ATP in this format. Okay, don't forget that. Okay, we create water as our byproduct in the light reactions, okay, as well as oxygen. Okay, so light reactions to the Calvin cycle, okay, where CO2 comes in and sugar is then produced. So in the Calvin cycle, okay, we have Rubisco, which is the most abundant enzyme on the planet. And we are going to first undergo what's called carbon fixation. Okay, and that's going to form PGA. And then we're going to undergo carbon reduction, which is going to produce G3P, which is a sugar that can be made into many other sugars and glucose. Then we have regeneration of Rubisco, and the whole cycle starts over again. Okay, so Rubisco, what it does is it fixes carbon from the air. So again, Your Calvin, and you have we have three phases of the Calvin cycle. First phase is carbon fixation, where we have Rubisco combining with CO2 to create PGA. Then we have reduction, where PGA is reduced to G3P, which can then produce glucose and other sugars. And then we have regeneration of Rubisco, where PGA is used to regenerate Rubisco. Okay? Okay, so I'm going to walk through this, sorry about this, one more time, especially this. So, photosystem 2, okay, remember photosystem 2 and 1 are kind of backwards because we discovered photosystem 1 before photosystem 2. So, excuse me, in photosystem 2, okay, we're taking in water, we're taking in sunlight, right? And we are getting these electrons excited to be passed on down the electron transport chain. And any electrons that are lost are replaced by oxidizing water producing oxygen. So we produce oxygen in photosystem 2 and take in water and sunlight. Next, okay, we've started our electron transport chain now. And every time we're going to pass down our electron transport chain, we're going to pop off our hydrogen ions, right? And then this is going to help us to create the hydrogen ion gradient, okay? And we are going to use that hydrogen ion gradient to power ATP synthase as those hydrogen ions diffuse through. And we use that to create ATP and we call this process photophosphorylation. Then we have the Calvin cycle. Get through this. This isn't even the one I'm going for. Here. 3 phases of the Calvin cycle. Carbon fixation. Rubisco and CO2 combine to form PGA. Then we have reduction. PGA is reduced to G3P, and this is where we get our glucose and all of our fun, yummy sugars. Then we have regeneration of Rubisco, where PGA is used to regenerate Rubisco. Okay? So those are the nitty-gritty basics of photosynthesis, the light reactions, and the Calvin cycle. Let me just make sure I didn't miss anything. Nope, so just this review, we're going to go over this in class again. Okay, awesome. See you in the next lecture.